Every day, we strive to preserve traditions that have spanned generations.
Around every turn of the bayou, Mother Nature reveals unique people, places, and experiences.
And the bounty of animals and fish. Well, in Louisiana, we just call that lagniappe. I'm Don Dubuque.
I'm Chris LeCoq.
I'm Captain Martha Spencer. Join us as we document the adventure,
Sportsmanship,
and heritage that make us Bayou Wild.
We're here in New Orleans East at Chef Menteur Pass, a very popular fishing spot. Great fishing, very accessible, and very close. But it's no secret that things are changing around here, and not always for a bad thing. We're going to be talking about it today with Vanishing Paradise.
I'm Alicia Renfro. I'm a coastal scientist with the National Wildlife Federation, working with our Vanishing Paradise group. Kind of back when I was in school, I did a lot of coastal wetlands work, and I was interested in coastal wetlands in general and got interested in conservation. Louisiana was always the place that really intrigued me though, because the scale of wetland loss is so great compared to almost any place else in the world, and we have so many kind of groups that use the wetlands in very different ways. So if we can figure out how to do coastal restoration in Louisiana, everything else is easy.
We're fishing in the Mississippi River Gulf outlet, called the M.R.G.O. Some people around here just call it the ship channel. Right now we're in St. Bernard Parish, and we're very close to Chalmette. Right on the other side of this flood wall is Chalmette. And in fact, the reason why that flood wall exists is to protect Chalmette from floods that come up here. And we're just fishing this row of rocks that's here to protect the shoreline. This is not an active shipping channel anymore. It was decommissioned after Hurricane Katrina. But all of this riprap and these rocks are here to protect that shoreline from eroding any further. But the bass just load up in here.
Right now we're in the M.R.G.O, the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet area. This is an area that the canal was dredged back in the 60s for navigation. It generally wasn't very well used. You had a lot of slumping of sediment. They had to dredge the canal all the time. But one thing that it did do was bring saltwater from the Gulf of Mexico up into these historically freshwater wetlands. Most of the ecosystem has not been restored from M.R.G.O. Back in 2009, the federal government undertook a feasibility study to actually figure out how do you restore this ecosystem that was damaged. And they found a lot of projects that they could do, but nothing has really been put in place at this point. They've built some rocks to stabilize the channel.
So when I was a kid, the M.R.G.O was basically a saltwater fishery. It was full of croakers, white trout, speckled trout, obviously. It's a lot narrower. But, this ecosystem here has changed dramatically just since the damming of the M.R.G.O. The fishery's really gotten better, in my view, a whole lot better.
When conditions are optimal here, the fishing can be great. Ooh, I got a jumper. Hey! Hello. Take a picture. From speckled trout to redfish, flounder, bass, freshwater catfish, drum. No need to change baits or fishing spots. Any cast can yield a mixed catch.
So this is part of the deal for the bass here. Especially ones this size. Stuff is always trying to eat them. This isn't a place where the bass are at the top of the food chain. These fish get preyed upon by alligator gars and big catfish and sharks, and who knows what took a chunk out of this guy, but he'll swim another day. My dad brought a big box full of stuff from my grandparents' house after Katrina. One of the things that he brought was an old map that was released by like WDSU radio. And it was like a fishing hotspot map for the New Orleans area. And it was from like the 1950s. But it was right after the M.R.G.O had been constructed. And it had little pinpoints on the map all along the channel. It showed you where to fish and what to fish for, and what you were likely to catch. And in this part of the M.R.G.O on that map, it was all bass, sac-a-lait, and blue catfish. And as you got farther down past Shell Beach, out towards Breton Sound, of course it changed to redfish and speckled trout and mackerel and that kind of stuff. So now that the salinities have come down though, in addition to generally catching trout in this area, the bass have come back and the catfish have come back. And you've even started seeing some guys every once in a while catch a sac-a-lait along these rocks. So it's not like the salinities coming down have turned this into a foreign place.
Do you think Louisiana is on par, above, or behind with, the average rec angler kind of being in tune with what's going on?
I think we're above. I think there's a lot of knowledge in our sportsmen in the area. I think there's been a lot of effort to educate people and make people aware of the issues that we have, and there's a lot of people who are really willing to step up and talk about these issues.
It's hard plastic day. We're looking for big speckled trout. Let's see what happens. Oh, there's a fish on the Miradine. Not the target species, but still fun.
So for our Vanishing Paradise program is about sportsmen. It's about reconnecting people with nature. So getting sportsmen aware of the issue, letting them use their voice to advocate for coastal restoration is one of the most important aspects of our work in the Gulf of Mexico.
One of those advocates is Todd Masson. Widely known to sportsmen on the Gulf Coast as Marshman Masson, Todd has made a career writing articles and producing videos that inform and educate about these issues. Todd agrees that change is evident, but that change is not always a bad thing.
Definitely get educated. So much misinformation out there, so many myths that are widely believed. I've spent a good part of my career trying to correct a lot of those myths.
Yeah, I think it's really important that as organizations we kind of come together and work with people who are out in the field working these areas. They have a lot of familiarity with the environment and they've seen those changes happening over time, and so they can tell you what they're seeing. They can tell you, where things are moving and what things are present at any given time, and that's such a powerful thing to have that kind of on-the-ground knowledge and kind of work together to elevate this issue.
Everything you do changes something. It does, and people don't want any change. But of course, every day you do nothing, things change. Just kind of incremental, just slow.
Nice trout, decent little trout. There you go.
All right, show us proper handling technique.
I've really grown to love this place. It's my favorite fishery by far in Louisiana. He is definitely 12, actually 12 and a quarter. Oh, big red, big bull red. I consider myself very fortunate to have been born here and fished my whole life here, and we need to do everything we can to preserve it and maintain it for sure.
Well, we've done plenty of fishing today, but we're also here obviously to talk about restoration, and that's really the principle of what we're out here for. We're actually standing in front of one at the Golden Triangle. What are we seeing here?
Well, behind us you can see some of the heavy equipment on site. You can see just over the marsh grass here, you can see where they've built kind of a mud bank, and that's called the containment dike. And what they'll do is they'll take around the perimeter of where they're going to restore the marsh and build up that mud, and they'll cut little holes in it so that when they pump the sediment in to rebuild the marsh, the water will run out and you'll be left with, a mud platform where the grass from the marsh can grow up and become habitat.
In past episodes of Bayou Wild, we've highlighted other areas of coastal restoration. Large-scale projects that rebuild entire barrier islands like here at Elmer's Island near Grand Isle. Or sediment diversion and marsh revitalization, such as the reintroduction of fresh water into the Maurepas Swamp. But this project in the Golden Triangle serves a different purpose. So I was talking to my friend about Botox the other day.
Okay.
With Botox, especially with women, they say that if you start getting it younger, when you're a little younger, before things really start to fall apart, it can actually preserve the youthfulness for longer. So, in doing so and working on a project that is not necessarily a completely fallen apart marsh, getting started on it beforehand, would you say that that might prolong something in the long run a little bit longer?
Absolutely. I mean, number one, I need to look into getting some Botox. But number two, when you still have the bones of the marsh left before you come in and try to do restoration, the cost isn't as much. You've got more of an opportunity to restore habitat than you would if it becomes open water.
Right.
And there's no doubt that this area over time, getting battered by hurricanes and not really having a ready available sediment source would become open water if not for the effort to restore the marsh. The cool thing about bringing the salinities down in the M.R.G.O. And bringing the salinities down in this area in general is that it gives this marsh much more of an opportunity to stay alive than if saltwater was coming in here and killing the submerged vegetation. It's really that submerged vegetation that you see in these lagoons and these bayou banks and in these ponds that's the lifeblood of this marsh. It's where the young fish live, it's what the ducks come to eat. It's the nursery ground. It keeps the water quality good. And so this has given us, this in combination with getting the salinities down, it's given us opportunities for this marsh to live for a long time.
Restoration implies you're fixing something that's kind of already fallen apart, but it's more like preservation.
I think the folks who lived in this part of the world during Hurricane Katrina can tell you that it's just a shame that the intracoastal here and the M.R.G.O. contributed to so much land loss in this area. It really created a funnel for that storm surge to come into these communities. It's a real shame that happened, but I think now we're recognizing both on a federal and a state level that it's our responsibility to make up for the construction of these projects and what it's done to the ecosystem. Bring this place back, get it healthier so that people can fish and hunt and live here for decades to come.
And now we're starting to see some restoration projects that are moving forward. We see 700 acres in the Golden Triangle area, 2,000 acres over Lake Bourne. But there's a much larger need for restoration, and it's going to take not just like the little funds that we have to cobble together. It's going to take a bigger federal effort, get the federal government involved in actually doing restoration like they should.
A lot of people would rather just be hands-off and let nature do its thing. And they want to catch speckled trout 5 minutes from the dock, like we've always done. But that's really not a natural system. That's not the way this system is supposed to operate.
I think we talk a lot about what we're losing, but we don't get a chance to talk about the things that are actually happening and that we're putting in place, the things that could be put in place.
We've heard time and time again that Louisiana's marsh loses a football field of land per day. It's the main reason why extending the life of our coast should be a top priority. But what we've learned today is that restoration can also be proactive. And we thank Chris, Todd, and Alicia for sharing their expertise and passion for Louisiana's Vanishing Paradise.
In Louisiana, you know, change is kind of a constant thing that we've undergone, and we have a tendency to think, oh, this moment is exactly how it's always been. But this is a system that does change. There's more fresh water, sometimes there's more salt water. We're not going to run out of the Gulf of Mexico. We're always going to have that salt water in. We need to have a balance of having the fresh water, intermediate, all the way to the salt water. That way everyone can kind of find where they thrive best.
You know, we've got a lot of work to do, and you know, like everybody else, I want my grandkids to enjoy what I've enjoyed, and we need to do everything we can to preserve it and maintain it, for sure.
We have the ability to fix it. We just need the funds and the resources and the awareness to do it.
We talk a lot about like what we're losing, but we don't get a chance to talk about the things that are actually happening and that we're putting in place, the things that could be put in place.
That awareness starts with each one of us. We encourage sportsmen of our state to stay educated about the health of our coast. It's the foundation that keeps the adventure, sportsmanship, and heritage of Bayou wild.